Welcome to the Ethics Experts, where we're elevating ethics and compliance and HR to the strategic level it's supposed to be.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Ethics Experts. If it's your first time joining us, welcome. And if you're a returning subscriber, hey, bestie, hope you're having an amazing day. The world is better because you're in it. You see what happens when you subscribe to the Ethics Experts? You get a bonus greeting on every single episode. So no brainer to hit that subscribe button and join us as we change the world by fixing our workplaces. I got a real treat for you. I know I say that every week, but I really mean it this time. We have Virginia MacSuibhne here, VP of Global Compliance at Agilent Technologies. She is an EthicsVerse alum. She's somebody that I think is so cool and just really excited to get her on. So how's it going, Virginia?
Great. I'm so excited to be here. Hi, how are you? Hi, EthicsVerse.
I love your energy. I think you bring a really unique angle to the ethics and compliance game. And I think it's I love this podcast kind of selfishly because I get to talk to really interesting people and people who are doing interesting things in our space. And you're definitely one of those. So I just want to kind of dive deep into, we'll get into your story and stuff like that in a second, but I want to dive deep into what I think is your really innovative approach to this game and how you build teams and how you sort of approach it. Kind of describe it in, one paragraph if you can.
All right. Well, first, thank you. So second, I'm obsessed with brand, right? So I'm all about personal branding, team branding, and I think that, customer first, right? And my customer is an internal customer, but I'm obsessed with creating moments of joy and a customer experience that's outstanding. So for my team's brand, it's all about risk-based, clear, easy, actionable compliance sprinkled with a little fun. And I think that sprinkled with a little fun is really important. We can still have fun at work. And while compliance, could be a dry, boring topic, it doesn't have to be. And I think of our team's job as de-lawyering, right? So my team calls me the anti-lawyer for a reason. I am trained as a lawyer, and I always start by saying, don't hold it against me. But I think that my superpower, one of my superpowers is sort of demystifying the law and taking really complex ideas and turning them into first what you can do at work. And I always start with the can do because I think it's really easy to start with the what you can't do and then people just shut down. I start with what you can do and then I finish with the do nots. And I think it's really important to have that sort of script for people because I believe people come to work and want to do the right thing.
So I love it all. Print that on a shirt or something we can.
Yeah.
But de-lawyering the game, talking about brand, talking about what we can do. Why do you think we've gotten it so wrong for so long? Why is this kind of common sense, to me at least, this sort of common sense approach? Why is this innovative in 2023?
I think it's a human first approach. I think we forget where it comes from. We forget all the layers of who we're talking to, right? And so I have to think deeply about everyone from my manufacturing floor and my warehouse to my sales, to my marketing, to my CEO staff. And those are different levels and it's complex, right? And saying no is the easy thing. I always say that's lazy compliance, right? And I don't do lazy compliance. I think it's easier to say no. It's easier to do sort of bottom line. I also think the industry evolved a lot from lawyers and a lot from, fraud examiners and people who are used to sort of rule-based approaches as opposed to values-based approaches. And so I think it's about sort of peeling through all of that, peeling back the onion and being right, but what is it we want people to remember at the end of the day, right? I love the quote, people remember, not what you said or what you did, but they remember how you made them feel. And we, in my team, make people feel things first so that they want to come back and talk to us. And that's the amazing experience, right? Because if they don't want to talk to us, if they're afraid of us, we've already lost the game. We've already missed our opportunity.
Yeah, you've already dug a moat around yourselves, and nobody wants to cross a compliance moat full of alligators or whatever.
Sharks or lions.
So I love that. I love that dichotomy where you said rules-based approach versus values-based approach. And I think that that's spot on. And I think the next gen compliance ethics officer is really going to understand that. And I think you're right. I think it came out of this sort of very like rules-based sort of black and white kind of background that a lot of the people that crafted programs, or a lot of people who were tasked with building programs, just sort of naturally gravitated toward. You famously, if people don't know, they need to tune in. You famously have built a reputation for building programs with like non-traditional people, and I love that idea. I think it's smart. I think we're going to see a lot more of that, particularly because ethics and compliance is really this multifaceted thing. It's not this one-dimensional, function in the organization. In order for it to be the circulatory system of the organization, and in order for it to actually influence the hearts and minds of people to where they want to behave as they grapple in that gray in the right way, we have to be able to resonate with them. And so that takes persuasion, and that takes influence, and that takes marketing, and that takes salesmanship, and it takes, clarity, and it takes communications, and it kind of takes all these different sort of colors on the palette for us to sort of paint this beautiful picture of, what a culture of integrity should be. Talk to us a little bit about how you think about crafting those kinds of teams, how, and what some of your experiences have been, and sort of, and frankly, in terms of like what the impact has been by sort of bringing this, it's kind of like an Ocean's 11 type of team, I think that you built.
For sure. I think it's more Ocean's 13. Isn't that the all women team? That's my team, to be honest.
Yeah, it's more of an Ocean's 13 type.
I have more of an Ocean's 13 vibe. Let's be clear. And a little Scooby-Doo mixed in. That is kind of my dream, the Scooby-Doo mystery machine. I think about it much like that. Like, first, it's what are the skills, but communication is number one. Like, I can teach all sorts of things about the rules and the laws, but the reality is every day there's a new rule, right? Every day I wake up, there's a new privacy law. And it's sort of, wash, rinse, repeat, and figure out how to churn that out for our organization. I like to say, the first privacy law that existed, there was no one in my organization who was like emailing me, Virginia, this privacy law came out. What does it mean for us? Like, every time now, someone's like, Virginia, I heard Texas has a new privacy law coming, or India's coming. Like, they email me the next day. That just didn't happen years ago, right? And people are paying attention in a different way to the laws, and they want instant gratification.
Right.
And so we first have to be ahead of it, and second, have to be great communicators. And so I have a program that is fully based on infographics. We are doing away with what I call your grandfather's code of conduct and your grandfather's sort of documentation. Nobody reads that stuff anymore. Nobody is going to in the future. Like, I often joke, maybe our next version is going to be tarot cards or baseball cards, because that's sort of the amount of information people can grasp. And so what I train my teams up to do, whether they come from a background of marketing or branding or communication or learning and education or not, is, hey, we all have to have this skill of how to communicate in discrete, clear chunks and bottom line it for people. And if they know the law, we've already failed. Like, when I'm out and I hear my teams are talking about GDPR or FCPA, we've already failed. I don't want them talking about the law. I want them knowing the behavior. And so that's what we focus on. Behavior first, never the law, because the law is not evergreen. And so if we are talking about the law, we've already missed the boat in a million ways. And so we've had to sort of delegalize our teams and sort of teach them that GDPR was a thing from 5 years ago. It's not the thing today. It's not even close to the thing today. So we do cute things like weather forecasts of the privacy laws, and we do, infographics that describe sort of what our privacy principles are now instead of talking about laws. We have a program that's called Pets of Privacy, and this is about hearts and minds. And so you can submit your pet, or as I like to say, your kid who's behaving like an animal, if you want, I don't care, right? And we'll put their picture on one of our infographics and describe a privacy principle, and then your pet's famous. And so we call it Agilent Famous. And so we have a page where you can just submit their pets. And so if I see your pet in your background, I'll be like, hey, did you know we have a program? And so I was on a call the other day with someone pretty senior in our organization, and I talk to them pretty regularly. And all of a sudden they said, Virginia, I've been waiting to talk to you. We finally have a pet I can submit. We have a new puppy in the house, right? And again, it's about connecting hearts and minds, right? It's like they know me for that, not for what I bring from a privacy perspective. And now we've connected on a personal level, but now we've already lowered defenses and we're much more likely to interact. And so I think that's a huge piece, is like that first connection point. How do you make that connection with people so they know about you and they've like looked you in the eye and they feel like they can trust you, right? Trust is so important. And especially in this like world of Zoom, how do you build trust on that? Pets of privacy, man, everybody wants to talk to us about that, right? And so it's just a great like icebreaker.
It's totally genius. And people love, they might love their pets more than their kids. You know what I'm saying?
Yes,
and
for sure.
It gets, I just can go on and on about it. I mean, it's such a genius way to get people engaged. And who doesn't want to see other people's pets and tie it into the thing? And now you have this sort of heart-mind connection.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so funny when you hit, like, you could be working with somebody for like a long, I've worked with somebody for a long time. And I just started like cycling. And I just started connecting with this guy whose office is next to me on a totally different level, because we have this like commonality now, you know what I'm saying? Because he's like a, big time cycler.
Right.
And finding those things that you can really at scale resonate with more people. I mean, it just does so much. And how did you guys come up with that idea? I mean, that's just brilliant.
Yeah. So, I mean, I have a house full of pets. We have 3 dogs and 3 cats. And so it's always a thing in our house. And so I'm always trying to think about what things resonate. And so I'm always like, what can we do with animals, right? And so we started thinking about creatures of compliance. And our great privacy officer was like, pets of privacy. I'm like, great, run with it. And so she also has this giant French Mastiff. And so we started by using my tiny puppies at the time, who are now giant, and her Mastiff. And then we started that way. And it just grew from there. Like, we didn't know if it was going to be big or not, but then we also have this great woman who has a branding and marketing background on our team. We have a woman who has, an educational and training background on our team. And, everybody sort of just pulls together and they start to teach them why that's a moment. But then when you see other people respond to it, you're like, oh, this is a thing. Like, and then we talk on our team about, why is this a thing? And when people also say to me in maybe other parts of our legal organization, like, I think you guys aren't as maybe professional as we expect, right? I just take that head on and I'm like, yeah, that's intentional. Like, you got to be in on the joke here, right? I know what I'm doing. Like, this is all part of the plan, right? This isn't.
It's so interesting though. That's so interesting. Like, I'm not surprised by that comment, but at the same time, I kind of am, because it's so clear to me that like people don't resonate with professional. No. People resonate with authentic. Mm-hmm. Maybe they resonated with maybe my grandfather resonated with professional. I don't know, but like, why do you think that's still like a sticking point for folks?
I think if you grow up as a traditional lawyer, right, then it's like, how can you be giving serious advice when you're dressed in a unicorn costume? Like, when you're dressed in a shirt that says straight out of compliance, right? And I'm like, because we're in on the joke, right? Like, we understand the layers that it creates, but I'm okay with it, right? Because I also know, right, the impact it has. And so what I try to teach them is, let me show you the impact I'm having on the business and how you can have that same impact. They do different things, right? They write contracts. And so, are you going to write Taylor Swift lyrics in contracts? Maybe not, but I'm definitely going to write it in my policy as an Easter egg and see who finds it, right? And so I think it's that they don't necessarily have the same flexibility in some of their work, or they don't see it. And so we try to teach them, hey, you can still jazz up some of your things just because you think there's this sort of traditional, my patent has to look this way, my contract has to look this way. Like, I don't write any of my agreements in a lawyerly language. Like, you put heretofore or including but not limited to, and my team knows I'm going to bleed red all over that. Like, write it for someone who can read it, because we can't write a different language. Like we can't write so that another lawyer has to read it. We have to write so that anyone up and down our chain understands it, or we've missed the boat on our policies.
Well, I've just seen like so much. I mean, kind of what you're talking about is this like we're talking about an outcome.
Yeah.
Right. We want to have this certain outcome, and there's multiple paths, just like any mountain, there's 1,000 paths up a mountain. What it's really all about in my mind, and I think in your mind, is like, how do we get this outcome most effectively, most efficiently? And it's like people seem to oversample on like, well, you can only take this type of path. And it's so silly because, you can't build a house with one tool. You know what I'm saying? Like it takes all kinds of different tools, and you can't influence people with, one way. You have to do it a bunch of different ways. And if you really think about like what the core of influence is, the first battleground is like the attention. Like we have to catch people's attention. If my message, like I have to gather, I have to get your attention and have you tuned into me to even open up your mind for that new idea to go in. If people's mind is like a steel trap and I can never get in there, it doesn't matter how I've sort of crafted this thing. Like I can make the most beautiful menu for my restaurant, and I could have the best food, but if nobody comes into the restaurant, they're never going to experience that. You know what I'm saying? And then nobody's going to talk about it. You have to get people to come in. You have to get people to engage. And it's just so interesting that again, this is not 1997 anymore. It's like, we are where we're at, and we are surrounded by stimuli, right? We're surrounded by like media channels that have obviously perfected it, right? If you're on social media or you're on like any of the streaming services, they've like cracked the code on how to gather attention, dial in really like a 15
30-second. Yeah. I mean, we do TikTok videos when Rap Battle was famous, and like I had my CEO staff and I did a battle. Like I will do whatever is the current challenge. Like I have literally no shame when it comes to doing something that will get people's attention at work. And I actually think the first battleground is psychological safety, and that's why I start with how to build trust, right? But I think people worry, right? They're like, will this be enough? Will this be the thing? And I'm like, if what we're aiming for now is showing effectiveness, like I have much better metrics on effectiveness by the squeals I get. Like we got a cheer at our sales conference, and when people asked what their favorite session at the sales conference was, it was compliance. One, that's never happened. And two, my head of sales took notice, and he was like, what did you guys do? Like we had a walkout song. We gave away t-shirts. Like we made jokes about ourselves, but we gave clear content as well. And people said it was both the most informative and the funniest, right? And it can be both things, right? It doesn't have to be one or the other. It doesn't have to be this or that anymore. You can do both. And I think if we don't play to all emotion, right? If we don't tug at all the heart, we're missing it. And that's why I believe in a diverse set of skills on my team, that I'm obsessed with the idea of brand, communication, learning, education for adults. Like what is the thing that will get your attention? And then if I get your attention, how do I keep it? And how do I make sure that the content I give you is relevant to you, meaningful, and good?
Yeah. I mean, that's like such a freaking win that at the sales conference, the best.
I know.
I mean, that's crazy.
Well, they also brought out, so we happened to be in Texas, so they went with the theme. And so they had a mechanical bull. And I was like, compliance has to check it. And so we wrote it first. And then they were like, you have to be kidding us. Like what compliance officer gets on the mechanical bull first? And we were like, like you got to be in on the game, right? If you're standing at the bar scowling at the bull, like, oh my gosh, this is a possible workplace. You got to be part of it. And so that's what we do. We're just always in on the joke, right?
Yeah. And you like bring that kind of energy. So at some point you weren't doing this. At some point you didn't have the full reins or the full like canvas that you could paint whatever you want on it. Yeah. I'd love to talk about like your journey from wherever
Baby
you came
lawyer.
from. Yeah. To now, and like what were those major kind of milestones that put this, obsession with brand and this obsession with, edutainment into your like heart and mind. And also I'd really like to get to like how did you manage the change in your organization? Because a lot of what you're doing is like pretty like radical. While like makes a ton of sense to me, I think in the average like company, they'd be like, this seems a little bit weird. So talk to us about like that journey and how you were able to kind of, push your way into things in order to have the kind of autonomy you have now.
Yeah. So I started my life as a baby lawyer. I'm a first generation lawyer in my family. I'm the only one. I was a scholarship student. So, no one was more surprised than me when I graduated law school, to be honest. I went into trial law, and it was about the time that Sarbanes-Oxley came out. So that was sort of a new thing. I was still a generalist. I was a trial lawyer. I loved going to trial. That was my thing. And so I did a lot of securities litigation, and I also did employment law. And for me, that sort of, the combination of the two felt natural, but everybody else sort of didn't get why those two things sort of matched. And I was like, well, it's sort of all bad things people can do at work, right? So it seems natural to me. And then I went in-house to a software company, and I was their employment lawyer, but I started doing trade secrets and fraud. And then they started their first compliance program. So I helped write their code of conduct. And that was really the first opening to me of compliance being like a job beyond being the lawyer. And I loved writing the code. Like I loved help writing the code. I'm obsessed, if you can't tell behind me, by visual things. I love color. I love visuals. I love visual stimulation. I love the idea of what people are drawn to. I don't think everybody learns the same. I understand that. And so as I started to develop my own authentic personality, I then went to a healthcare company and was their first compliance lawyer, and started to sort of really build my own brand of how I wanted to do compliance. I took this job at Agilent about 2.5 years ago, and I was really intentional when I started this job. Like when I interviewed, I was myself, but like maybe 100 times, 10 times at least. Like I was like, I want you to know what you're getting. Like I am a full contact sport. Like I don't do this by half measures. I am like this all the time. Like I come in and I'm like, I'm a tornado a little bit, right? Like I don't tone it down. I don't apologize. I am always this, because this is now what I fully believe. This is what I've seen be effective. It's what I see works. It's what I want to do. And I only want to be at a company that's ready for that. I'm just done. I just turned 50 this week, and I'm just done being at places that aren't for me. I want to be able to be me and to do it my way now. And so I took a job at a place that I thought would really be up for that. And I was really clear about who I am and what I bring to the table and what I don't bring, and how I bring my full self to work. I also am very clear that I live and lead with disability. I have a chronic pain disorder. I live with depression and anxiety. And while that may seem contrary to what I have just said, right, that's part of why I live this large. When I feel good, I lean fully into it, because I know what it's like to live really dark and feel really bad.
So a lot in there. Let's talk about what you just talked about. How does that living with these things, how does that help you be more empathetic with your team, with the broader organization? Like, I just feel like you're probably the type of person that uses that as like a point of leverage and like a superpower, but help me understand how you do that.
Yeah, I mean, I have experienced a lot of trauma. I have a stalking experience, which left me with complex PTSD. And so I've had to really work through trauma. And so I understand it. I see it in others. It's left me as an empath, right? I don't believe there's a reason everything happens, but I do believe in taking the good things out of whatever bad there is. And so what it's left me with is a deep ability to read the emotions in the room. Like I can see trouble coming a mile away, like I can see what people are going through in a meeting. And yeah, it's a deep leverage point for me. And so it makes me a better leader. I don't shy away from emotion in conversation. I dig deep with people, right? I will stop and say, hey, it seems like this is going on. Do you want to share that? I mentor a lot of people, and when they're willing to dig deep, I dig deep with them and I help them sort of develop their own superpowers and figure out how to do their own work so that they can live authentically, right? Because I think hiding is really hard and it takes a lot of energy to hide.
Totally. I mean, it takes so many mental calories to keep that facade up and keep this thing that's going on like in the background. I mean, it just does. And that's,
it's exhausting, right?
It's exhausting.
And so, yeah. And so I'm the executive sponsor of our LGBT community. And I'm really proud of that because I think that's a place where people often have to hide out of fear. And I really want to support that. And so I spend a lot of time and energy supporting and bringing people up in leadership, and also just being really clear that, like, yes, I do this on top of and over the top of these things. I don't pretend to have the answers for them, but I know how I've managed them. And I readily, as my mentees would say, I readily just open my toolkit and I'm like, here's some tools. Here's a tool I've used. Here's a tool I've used. And I give them the shortcut to the tool.
Yeah, you don't have to have the answers, but I think you have to have the heart. And, you know, what I find is interesting is kind of how consistent all of this is. You're talking about your involvement in this and the mentorship and, how you're able to balance this trauma and not hide it, right? And I was talking to somebody last week on the ethics experts, and he said, I don't think it's ever realistic for people to bring their whole selves to work, because I don't think that that's a realistic thing. He said, if we can just not feel ashamed at work, though, that's kind of like good enough. And I thought that's an interesting reframe because I'm sure technically that's true. I'm still going to keep saying it because I just like how it sounds, and I think it kind of encapsulates it. But like, just not feeling ashamed at work about the trauma you've been through or your beliefs or whatever those things are allows for so much more of like the magic, the God-given gifts that we all have to come to bear in pursuit of the organizational mission that like we're a part of, And I think those are the things, it goes back to what you were saying, frankly. Like you said, people don't care about what you say or what you do. They care about how you make them feel. And that's obviously true on a one-to-one basis, but it's also true kind of like at large at like a corporate basis. If people can feel like they don't have to be ashamed at work, then you just get so much. I mean, yes, like I guess, like selfishly from a corporate perspective, you get like more out of them. But it's also just like more fun, And that's also not like, in my mind, it's not wrong. My dad said many years ago, he's like, if you're not having fun, you're not doing it right. And I just thought like, oh, that sounds cool. And then like, as I've gotten older, I'm like, oh, that's actually like super sage advice. Like if you're not having fun and you're not enjoying what you're doing, then your heart's not in as much, or your mind isn't elsewhere as much, or you're not as engaged as much. And there should be room for both. There should be room to your point, like there should be room for the rules that we have to like handle and then the fun in it, right? Like we do that in all these other aspects of our life. Why do we have to like pull that fun piece out when we're at work? It's just bizarre.
Yeah. And I mean, I work at a mission-driven company, right? What we make are things that make the water safe, the soil safe, make sure that the drugs that are being made have the right combinations, right? Like we make cancer diagnostics. Like I work for a company that makes meaningful things. Like it is a joy to be able to contribute to that, right? Like if that doesn't get you up in the morning, nothing will. But yeah, how is it we forget that in the day job, right? Like, I just can't do that. Like, I want to bring all of the flavor of life to all of our work. And so to our work meetings, it doesn't have to start and end with like, here's the agenda and here's what we're doing. It's like, what's your favorite flavor of jelly bean? And what do you wear on your shoes in the morning? Like, like those things connect people, especially in this, weird electronic space that we've come to post-COVID. And connection matters. Like that's what we're all looking for. It's not, necessarily deep love connection, but it's human connection.
Yeah.
And that's what this is all about. And so we can find all of those things at work, and we can find joy at work, and we can make joy at work. And it's better. I spend a lot of time doing this. And so I'd rather that me and my team are enjoying our time together than being like, oh, I can't wait for this to be over, right? Let's make it fun.
Totally. So as like, I want to talk a little bit about like what, it seems like you came to the job interview for this job. Like, okay, if I'm going to take this job, it's going to be how I want it. Right.
Yes.
And what I find is interesting in that is when somebody comes in with a vision, like if we're creating a position in our company and they come in with a vision and they come in with that confidence, I'm like so bought into it. You know what I'm saying? It's like,
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, cool. This person kind of gets it. They're going to make it their own.
Yeah.
Where did that confidence come from? And like, what did you learn in your last couple of jobs, that like you said, okay, I'm definitely changing that? Or like, where did the confidence come from to say like, okay, well, if I'm going to make this jump, it's only going to be if it's, actually a greener pasture, or if I'm actually going to have like free reign to do what I want.
I mean, I spent almost 13 years at my last job. I am a serial monogamist when it comes to jobs. So let's start there. So I think it's, I'm not sure that it's confidence as much as I know now after, almost 25 years in this business, like what I think works, but also what I know brings me joy and where I do my best work. Like I'm best at this kind of program. And so if this is the kind of program you're up for, then I'm the right person for you.
Right.
If you want to do plain vanilla, then let me introduce you to other people who that is what they're great at. And that's fine. Like I have no judgment about people who want something else. Like maybe this isn't great for finance, right? I'm cool with that. Like I went in saying, I know who I am and I know what I want to do. And if I'm right for you, great. If I'm not, also great. Like no judgment anymore. Like I just am not going to take it personally anymore if I'm not right for people. Because I know now what I didn't know when I was 20, there are hundreds of thousands of millions of companies out there, and you can find your people, you can find your tribe. I think we often are like, oh my gosh, it has to be the this one or the that one. There's so many places, and they are very different based on their leadership and their ideas and their models and their things. Find the one that's the right fit for you. Take the time to do that. So that's the confidence I have, is knowing the variety that exists out there, because I've worked with so many different kinds of companies now that I know there is a place, and now I know who my people are and who they aren't, right? And I'm okay with not being for everyone at this point in my life.
Yeah, I mean, I guess just knowing that variety exists and that's okay and that's great. That in itself is can be a source of confidence. As you've sort of built out this team, you said you've been here for 2.5 years. And did you have a vision for bringing non-traditional people in, A, and B, how have you found the sort of distinctive flavor of your team? How has that sort of been a catalyst to attract like-minded folks? Do you find that happening, or how does that sort of distinct energy or whatever profile of you and as that trickles out to your team, how does that serve as how does that help you sort of sort through people that are joining your team? You know what I mean?
Yeah. So I absolutely had a vision for bringing in non-traditional people. And,
off the bat,
I knew I wanted an operations lead for compliance, which a lot of people don't do, right? It's sort of a chief of staff, and the person I brought in is someone I've worked with a long time. I waited 5 years to get her on my team. I'm a person who has sort of a bench out there always. And I'm always like, you're on my bench. And if you're on my bench, it's like the FBI, once you're in, you're never out. And so I play the long game. I will keep you on my bench forever. If I think you're talented and I want you. And so she had a marketing background. And we worked together on a project, and I was obsessed. I knew that was the the thing I wanted. She had worked on bringing product branding and marketing to life. And I knew that she knew deeply how to do product things, how to talk to sales and marketing teams, but also how to then brand and market a program. And so that was a position they didn't have before. And I knew I wanted that to help support the code of conduct, the policies and procedures, the helpline. And one of the first things we did was sort of rebrand our helpline. I took out all of the nonsense detail, like I don't want people to answer 15 questions before they get to the helpline. I'm like, what happened? That's where we start
Just
now.
Get to it.
Just
totally.
All you need to do is tell us what happened and we'll figure out all the back end who
Yep.
needs to answer it. Life changing, right? And the look and feel and the interface for them changed. And then we put on the interface what happens in an investigation and the difference between confidentiality and anonymity, right? Two big infographics so people answer the big questions up front, right? So that was some of the major work. And then over time, we also have attracted and recently acquired someone who's amazing with learning and development and understands programs and systems and all of the things that are required to make that great. And so we're working on what that will bring forward in the future. Then I also had this really interesting team of some lawyers, some not, all throughout the globe. And my job was to sort of bring them together. On my first day, my privacy lead quit. And I recruited her back. And that's one of the things I'm most proud of. So I knew she was great. I understood she quit not because of me, because it was my first day. How could it be about me? Right. And so I spent a lot of time still talking to her. I introduced her to a privacy network. And then I was like, reeling her back in. Like, I still think you're right. While I was interviewing for the, role. And then I got her back.
So how did that work?
Yeah. So I was interviewing a bunch of people. I was talking to her about, her development, her growth, just mentoring her, right, as just in life and introducing her to people. And I knew she wasn't quite happy at her new role. And I said, okay, in a year, you're going to want to quit because you think you think you need to stay in this role for a year. I'm not going to have a job in a year. I have a job now. If you apply tomorrow, I will interview you tomorrow. And this is what we can do. And I think you're the right candidate. And I know you think you're the right candidate. Don't worry about what it looks like on your resume. We'll call this a COVID crazy moment. Right? And if you think this is right, I know it's the right thing. And I know how much the organization loved you because I got a million emails when you left. And so we made it happen. And she's like, I don't think you can make this happen. I was like, you watch me. I'm magical. I'm a magical unicorn. And we made it happen. And I got another million emails when she rejoined about, how did you do that? I was like, I'm a magical unicorn.
That's amazing. But, also, yeah. I mean, it kind of comes, I would imagine that you didn't have that agenda from the start. I think
I didn't.
You just were trying to help and trying to open your network up authentically, and you were mentoring this person authentically. This wasn't like a bait and switch type of a situation.
It was 100%
It just sort of naturally worked. And I always say that the key should fit in the lock. And sometimes people bounce for a reason and then they regret it. But just having that sort of freedom and getting to know you in sort of a low stakes way really probably helped a ton. And now you have someone that's probably, even more impactful than they were, right? Like they left and got a ton of emails. They're probably even more engaged than they were, especially at the end when they were looking for like their next opportunity. And what a great sort of story and what a great way to kind of make an impact right off the bat as you join the organization,
Yeah. And so that also helped the organization see that I wasn't the same.
Totally.
Right. Person.
Yeah.
Right. And so every moment is sort of a moment to tell your story. And so every introduction, every reintroduction, every new person, I'm trying to tell the story of what we're trying to do. And then I have, a bunch of, we have this interesting challenge in our organization. When I started, there were about 400 people in the organization with compliance in their title somewhere. And I'm like, well, they don't all report to me. Who are they? And so I was like, doesn't matter. I'm just going to start emailing them all and treating them all like they're part of our team. And so that's sort of what I did. I just started talking to them all and like bringing them all into the fold. And over, 2 years, some sooner than others, they just started being part of the emphasis and the feeling and the part of the team and the organization, because they heard me say the same things over and over in the same communication. And so they got on the wave of what we're trying to do and started being part of a program and feeling part of a team, right? And I think the first thing, that feeling part of a team, is more meaningful than the program piece. And so
100%.
That's where I always start.
So you seem like a long-term focused person. Yeah. You play a long game. Yeah?
Play the long game.
So, where does that come from? Because I think that is such a, I think that's like such an underused, like, I just think that is like the way to live everywhere. And I think when you do that, it allows for like a lot more budget to do stuff like that. And you care less about like, okay, well, I'm just going to keep emailing these 400 people because who cares? Because I'm just going to keep doing it. Versus like somebody who has a short-term focus who ends up which I think kind of leads to this like outcome-based approach where you're really kind of like concerned with the outcome, many times an outcome you can't actually control, that then creates this anxiety loop that then ends up like compromising efficacy and so forth. So tell me about that. Like, have you always been a long-term focused person? Has that been something that like you developed? And what advice would you give to somebody who, I mean, we all fight this, of course, we want the results sooner, and we had some technical issues before this thing, and I was, apologizing for it. And you're like, don't apologize for something that you can't control. But like that frontier in my mind of what I can control and what I can't control, like, even though I would sort of label myself a long-term focused person, like that's a moving thing. And I get that wrong a lot. Like, what would you tell to somebody who finds themselves like constantly caught in that sort of outcome, attaching too much to the outcome? How would you help them reframe, how much, the promised land that is that long-term focus, and how freeing that can be?
So I was not always good at this. Like when I was a baby lawyer, I was transactional. I was like, my job is you're paying me X amount an hour to do this work. My job is to do the work. You don't care about what I do on the weekend. You don't want to know my things. And so I was not relational at all.
Yeah.
And my first job in-house, the team was like, stop shutting your door and being so transactional. Like I got a lot of feedback about being too transactional. And because I was the HR lawyer in the first job, like I used to try and shake hands and they all came in for a hug. And I was like, I don't hug. Like I'm a handshaker. What are we doing? And so it really had to change my boundary. And I learned a lot from just being an employment lawyer, because the HR team is all about the relational aspect and not the transaction. And so I would say they taught me a ton. And then what I really try and learn is like, it doesn't all have to happen in the meeting. And I think that's what happens is like we have this schedule and our schedule is all about meetings, and we forget that you can circle back and be like, hey, I messed up on this and I want to just reset. And if you just remember, it's not just about that meeting or that moment, and you have the control over the relationship and you do the circle back, that's where I get a lot of power and a lot of then grace for myself. Because in moments I make really dumb mistakes, and then I try and really share with my team the dumb things I do and the circle back, right? Because that's where the power is to be like, I reflected on that and I was not my best self and that was not my intention. And how can we move forward differently? I try to let people learn from my mistakes instead of theirs. And I'm really big on sharing my own goof ups, because I think the team can be like, oh, you're amazing. And I'm like, no, I'm human. Like, please don't make any. I mean, yes, I am a magical unicorn, but also, I know where that power comes from, and I'm also human. I screw up all the time. And so I think it's that, creating that space between it has to be done in this moment, in this conversation versus I want to be in relation and I want to have us have a good dialogue. And when you're in an organization, you are not just going to meet that person one time over this one thing. Mm-hmm. You've got to be relational with them.
Yeah. And which kind of goes back to what you were saying about psychological safety, right? Like if you can create this really kind of humanized, whatever, human first, environment, which, I mean, we're all flawed. We all have
Yeah.
struggles. We all have things that we do well. We all have things that we do wrong. I mean, I screw up every single day. So acting again, like we don't have those things. I mean, that takes a lot of that mental energy, right? To kind of keep that facade up and be the great, and powerful Oz.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Let's talk a little bit about that psychological safety and how I think, so let me kind of pause. Like the psychological safety thing, I think is critical. And I think when you're playing a long game, our lives are a lot more. Have you ever seen those photorealistic painters like on Instagram and they're like painting like each hair? You know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
Okay. And that's a beautiful painting. No
For
one's
sure.
life is that way. Okay.
No.
That has 0 errors on that thing.
Yeah.
My life is like a mosaic. Fingers crossed. So there's a bunch of misshapen pieces that are kind of mashed together. And if you blur your eyes, you're like, yeah, that looks pretty good. Like that's how I think life actually is. But I think when people, especially in the business world, they think like, well, we have to be those sort of photorealistic painters. And that takes a lot of extra effort that is like not translating into anything that allows for the psychological safety for people to like really be themselves. So like, what would you tell somebody who really struggles with bringing to bear their own flaws or bringing to bear their own, struggles in the context of this sort of professional facade, this professional armor is what I would call it, that they feel has probably served them well throughout their career and gotten them to where they are at,
Yeah. So 2 things. One, acknowledge, right? Yeah, anything that you have as a mechanism, right? You learned, right? Whether as a child, as a safety mechanism, right? Those things served you well. So thank them, acknowledge those tools, right? And then put them away and put them where they belong, right? Recognize them when they come forward and be like, yes, thank you, fear. I see you. I'm going to put you in the back seat for a minute, right?
You've
Thank you,
protected me.
judgment. Yeah, thank you for protecting me. Really appreciate it. This is not a tiger. This is just an email, right? It's right. And so we are human animals at the end of the day, and so we still have those things. And I think it's the first thing is recognizing and acknowledging them. And if you can acknowledge them and be like, yes, I know what you served. I know that you got me through very difficult moments in my life, and I thank you for that. And I'm also just going to put you in the passenger seat for a minute here. I'm going to drive today. Right. We don't let fear drive the bus. We don't let anxiety drive the bus. We don't let depression drive. We put you in the back seat and we give you some candy or a movie to watch. We're going to let the grownups handle this now, right? So I think that's part of it. I think the other thing, like when you talk about those people who do these drawings, right? What that comes from is years of practice, right? And so what people forget is that all of this is about practice. Like the reason I can go into a meeting today and not panic is that I have years of practice, right? I used to go into every deposition and have written down every question and not be able to stay present in those. Like I couldn't listen to what they were saying because I was like, what's my next question, right? And everyone would be like, you have to listen and you have to know. And I'm like, yeah, but I don't know and I don't understand. And so I'm just writing it and I'm just doing the work to get to a place. But now I trust myself. I can take a deep breath and I can be like, listen to what's happening and trust that I have enough experience to have an answer. Or I can say, I don't know. Can I get back to you? And I think that what happens in those moments is we get hijacked. We're like, we have to answer on the spot, or I don't know enough, or I'm going to feel flooded and I'm going to get overwhelmed. It's okay to take a beat. It's okay to be like, I can't answer that right now, or I'm actually not comfortable talking about that, maybe at a different time, or right? You've got to though practice, and you've got to practice low stakes, right? So practice first with your friends. Like I didn't always talk about all of these things, and I don't always, but the more I do, here's what I learn. Every time I say things about anxiety or depression or chronic pain, those are the things people come to me after and want to talk about, right? They don't want to talk about what I do all day in a compliance program. They come up to me after and say, no one's ever said that as a leader. And I know that to be true. And I know that's what impacts them. And I know that's what touches them. And that's why I keep doing it. And if you never practice, you never know what thing is going to be someone else's playbook. And so,
yeah, if you don't try to humanize yourself, you don't I'm pretty comfortable doing that myself, probably because of my position, probably because I've tried it. And I mean, really, it's from that. It's like from trying it and seeing, wow, that actually resonated with somebody, or that made somebody feel more comfortable, or they've come up to me afterwards and said, thank you for sharing, that kind of a thing. And it's just so freeing. It's like, I can shut off that like fear algorithm that's running in my mind, that's like trying to hide these things that I'm scared of, like getting out. It's like, okay, well, guess what? You get good and bad with me. Okay. You get some good things, you get some bad things. And my whole, my life is and if you look in the wake of my life, there's thousands of mistakes. Okay.
Yeah.
And it's all good. I'm still standing.
I learn more from my mistakes than I do from the things that went well. And I try to tell my team that, like, when they're struggling with a project, I'm like, you're going to learn more from this project. I promise you. Like,
well, you'll remember it more for sure.
For sure. My mistakes leave scars, and those are the things I remember more. And that's probably why they have such shame associated with them. And so that's part of why I tell the story. If I tell the story, then I won't keep the shame. Right. And so, and I hope it helps someone else. Like, hey, I did this thing and that didn't work. So here's what I did to fix it.
Yeah. I mean, I guess we could go on and on. We could probably write a whole book about this thing of how
I hope so.
Humanizing ourselves, humanizing our programs, humanizing our teams allows for dropping of the guard. It allows people to engage more authentically. It allows for so much more like cross-pollination and like sharpening of each other. And so that we're not all reinventing the same wheels, and we're not falling off of the same bikes. We can actually learn from each other. I mean, it's definitely the way to do it. And I think it's encouraging that there are people like you around who are willing to share that experience, because I think at the core of it, it takes like some kind of it takes some courage to do it, right? Like, to the extent that there's fear preventing me from doing something, then in order for me to actually do that thing, I have to overcome that fear, which is going to be like a leap of faith or a leap of courage. And, sometimes I'm not willing to make that until I see somebody else do it and say, okay, maybe I'll try it, so I appreciate deeply your openness to share this approach, and, the phenomenal, results that you're having, I think, are a testament to the authentic heart that is behind it all,
I mean, my goal is that I think we can do this differently. And I want to create the next generation of compliance professionals thinking, what can we do differently? Not what can we keep doing the same, right? That's what I love about compliance, is that we are still breaking ground. This was not a job when I came out of law school. And so let's not forget that. Let's not forget that we're making this up as we go along. And so let's do it the way we want to do it. Let's make it great. Let's not make it plain vanilla. Let's make it amazing. And when people say what can be effective, let's think about what can be effective for humans, not what can be effective because the DOJ came in and was like, yes, I saw that in a written thing. Let's think deeply about what effective really means.
Correct.
And let's not think to worst case scenario. Let's think about the 80%, right? Not the 20% that I think we all fear, right? Let's think about the 80% that we do every single day and who we're serving. We're not serving the DOJ. We're not serving the SEC. I serve our stakeholders and my employees and my channel partners and all the people who are part of the program, just trying to do the things that work. That's who I serve first.
Well,
and if the DOJ supports that, great.
Well, I mean, I would even argue that the DOJ, SEC, whatever coming in, like, if the goal is effectiveness, then you can have a very good argument on why you think this is effective. And I have these data points to show, hey, look at my engagement is up and so forth. Obviously, it's not carte blanche to just ride, mechanical bulls all the time and give out t-shirts with no message behind it. But if that's a packaging, if that's how we're plating the dish, and that allows people to engage at a deeper level, I don't think there's anything to worry about from the DOJ perspective. As a matter of fact, I would imagine that they would say, wow, this is actually innovative. And this is actually probably, at the end of the day, we're trying to drive human behavior, and we're playing a game of attention, and we're playing a game of influence. And I can see at least the intentional drive to, toward efficacy. That's what you're really driving at. So, and also, like, how bad is it going to go? If you do something new, like how bad is it really going to go? We can think in bets. We've been talking about this a lot, like the importance of thinking in bets. And, you can win a poker tournament without winning every hand. Nobody went, well, let's put it this way. Nobody wins a poker tournament by winning every hand.
Right.
It's possible to do. You have to win the most important hands. And that comes from like knowing when to make the big bets that you need to make, which comes from experience and trial and error and all that kind of stuff. But I think like a lot of people are playing this game, like I got to win this tournament. And in order to do that, I can't lose any chips at any point in time. And that's an insane way to go through life. It's an insane way to go through this game, I think.
Absolutely. And I think we've been playing too safe in compliance.
Totally.
And so
agree.
I want to play more risky, and I want to play more fun, and I want to play more interesting, and I want to tweak the knobs a little bit and turn up the volume in some places and see what really works for people and what doesn't. And what happened is we keep getting invited back, and we keep getting invited to different things that we weren't even considered for before. And that's how I know it's working. And when our data protection officer came and visited us, and what happened is they were like, this feels different. Like we've never felt a program like this. And I was like, yeah, it's all in how it feels. Like I could tell you a lot of things about the program, but when you walk in the door, what you'll know is this feels different. And what you'll know if you talk to anyone that we've interacted with is they will tell you a fun story about how they've interacted with us. And, the joke is when they go to look for their pet on our Pet of Privacy, what happens is they stop and stay on our website because they find 10 other things that are interesting. And that's the trick, right? That's the magic. And so it's all with intention. Everything we do is about intentionality.
Man, oh man, I just love it. It's so I'm so like energized from this conversation because it is the next level. It is the next thing. And our behaviors sort of stem from our brains and our minds, but our minds are sort of determined by our heart. And if you can get that heart connection right, if you can humanize it, then you're going to get brought in earlier. And people are, and if you can resonate with people on that heart level, then you're going to authentically change those behaviors. So those aren't going to be like, bumper stickers on the car. It's going to be the fuel for the engine, which is a much different thing, and I think we've been so concerned about putting bumper stickers on the cars that are our business. And we haven't been looking at how can we change the fuel that's actually driving this thing forward. It's really, I love it. It's super inspiring for me.
Yeah. I mean, even the way we decorate our space. So outside of my area, we have an Instagram wall and we put a neon sign that says better in compliance, right? And so it's the little things
100%.
That make a difference. And like there's another sign that says this must be the right place. And like keep calm and call a compliance officer. And so people were always like, oh, your space is so fun, right? And it's all of those things that make people feel welcome instead of feel like this is a scary place to come and ask a scary question. I know when they ask a question, I know for some people, it's their worst day at work when they call our helpline. And so my job is to make the barrier to entry as low as possible and make it as easy for them. And my team will sometimes joke, like, people call you with the weirdest things. And like, why do they feel like they can just call you directly? And I'm like, that's the magic. When they feel like they can just hit call on Zoom for no reason, then I know I'm making an impact. They don't need to know my name, but someone has told them I'm someone they can call directly.
Isn't that funny? Magic. Like you wouldn't be able to create that space if you weren't comfortable with yourself and you didn't create an environment that allowed the people on your team to be comfortable with themselves and bringing their authentic selves forward. Isn't that funny? Once that sort of space is created, people get more comfortable with your department. I mean, it's all connected. You know what I'm saying?
It's all connected. It's all about authenticity and right? No barrier to entry, right? We are a low hierarchy team and everyone has authority and responsibility. And I take that very seriously. I have very high standards, make no mistake about that. I take this all very seriously. But I also love it and I love bringing joy to it. And I want the next generation to feel empowered to do it differently and to think about the different mechanisms and also to think about how COVID has changed the world and how we need to adapt and how social media is continuing to change the world and what is next and what we need to do to adapt. Yesterday's code is not for the future. And if you think it is, you are missing the boat and you need to think differently.
Well, I think on that we should wrap up because we could probably keep going for another hour, but just where can people find you? You know, you're kind of all over the place, but where can people connect with you easiest?
Yeah, so I'm on LinkedIn. That's the easiest place to find me. 2 of my fabulous compliance unicorns are going to be at the SEC conference this year talking about our program. Shannon Jameson and Krista Wolf. Check them out. They're going to tell you all about the secrets to our program and how it's magical. And they are the magic. So go see them in October in Chicago, or online if you're checking it out there. That's the best way to find us. And thanks, Nick. It's been so great talking.
So fun. All right. Well, thanks for joining us. Until next time. Okay. My gosh, that was so good.
Thank you so much.
This should have been a 2-part episode. I mean, my goodness, we could have just kept going. I have a whole list of other questions we didn't even get to, but yeah, this was everything I was hoping it would be. And just thanks for all that you're doing. And I don't know, you're really like revolutionizing something. I think 10 years from now, you're going to see programs like yours, ish, a lot more prevalently than we are right now,
I hope so. I mean, I believe in this, and Shannon and Krista are doing amazing things. And I hope that when people see some of the magic they're bringing, I mean, it's simple. There's little things that change.
Little things.
They're little tiny things.
That's what I'm always trying to tell people. It's just like little tweaks to what you're doing can have this transformative impact, but it starts with like our own confidence in our own, our own confidence in our own, like
100%. You have to believe
if we can do that, then anyways, I love your work. I just, thank you so much for joining.
Thank you
my day
so
for
much.
sure.
It was so great. Good luck with daddy duty.
Thank you so much. I'll see you soon.
Care.
All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.